These are important referendums on March the 8th, and I will be voting yes and yes to change our constitution. As members of this House know, the first referendum proposes to amend Article 41 of the Constitution. It does so to support and value the family and to widen the concept of the family to reflect today's Ireland. In today's Ireland, many families extend beyond the family based on marriage. We have one-parent families and cohabiting couples together with their children. We all know these families. Some of us are these families. They form part of our wider networks of kinship, neighbours and communities. But the current language in our Constitution excludes these families. The current wording of Article 41, and indeed some of the amendments proposed by my fellow senators, bring to mind Oscar Wilde's statement that to define is to limit. I believe the government's proposed wording is a fairer and more honest reflection of the Ireland we have become. The second referendum proposes the removal of text on the role of women in the home and would insert a new Article 42B to recognise and value family caring. While I always welcome constructive debate to ensure that all perspectives and unintended consequences have been considered, I will admit to being a bit more than taken aback by some of the opposition to the proposal to change the language in the Constitution on women and their duty in the home. Not only is the language outdated now, it was inappropriate when it was first proposed back in the 1930s. At that time, it met opposition from such champions of equality as Professor Mary Hayden and Hannah Sheehy Skeffington. And in 1937, Kathleen Clark was one of several women TDs who took issue with the De Valera's new constitution because of its anti-women attitudes. I've heard and considered the argument that the current wording does not confine women's choices in any way, even psychologically. The proponent of this particular perspective happens to be a colleague of ours here in the House. But for what it's worth, I don't believe the majority of men would presume to tell women what does or does not impact on them psychologically. I've spoken at length with a number of women on this particular issue, and I know that it is quite personal to many. One woman recounted her introduction to Bunreacht na hÉireann at the age of 11 or 12 in national school. She recalls the attention resting on Article 41, and the feeling of intense nausea at the implication of what those words meant, as the implication of what those words meant dawned on her. That was 40 years ago. But we do need men in this debate. We need men to recognise the value of care that is not based on gender, not only for the girl and women folk in your life, but because many of you, boys and men, are playing vital caring roles. And we need to have that role valued in our Constitution. These referendums have also been likened to blind man's buff, a game many of you may recall from childhood, a game of catch where one child is blindfolded, spun around in an attempt to disorientate them before they were released on the group. And it strikes me as the perfect analogy, because what is at play here is an attempt to derail a simple and necessary update to archaic and sexist language through spin and disorientation. I recently read Des O'Malley's memoir, a man whose experience for over 3 decades spanned roles in government, opposition, and in the formation of a new political party. Though our politics and opinions would not always have aligned, for example, he proposed the abolition of this House, I have a great admiration for his commitment to a constitution that reflected a tolerant and pluralist Ireland. In his memoir, O'Malley attributes much of Ireland's social development, in particular in relation to attitudes towards women, to our membership of the EU. O'Malley wrote, "This is important. The transformation in our attitudes to women, issues of equality and simple fairness might have happened by now under the pressures of feminist advance, but it would have been a much slower and I suspect more painful process politically if we'd not had the Enlightenment thrust upon us." Bear with me. But Enlightenment thrust upon us is not enlightenment. It is compliance, and in 2024 we can do better. As true now as then, these issues of equality are of equality and simple fairness. And in 1987, as leader of the Progressive Democrats, O'Malley proposed that the very article we are discussing here today needed change. I quote again, "Is it true that by her life within the home, women gives to the state a support without the common good cannot be achieved? The theme of International Women's Day 2024, not by accident the same date as the referendum, is to inspire inclusion. The International Women's Day website reads, "When we inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion, we forge a better world." So I say to every person eligible to vote in Ireland on the 8th of March, take the blindfold off and find your target. 2 strong marks in the yes boxes for a constitution where care and family are valued beyond the constraints of the perspective of a patriarchal society, because that time has come and gone.